What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another video. And in today's video, we're actually going to be taking a look at what is on my PlayStation 3 hard drive in 2023. Now, a couple of years back, I did a video showing you all what was on my PSP Go, and I think that was back in 2018, so a little while ago. But a lot of you really seemed to like that video, and I had a fun time making it and kind of going through and seeing what was on my PSP at the time. And so I thought, why not do it again, but with my PlayStation 3. And I think with PlayStation 3, there's going to be even more to talk about because during the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 generation, I really went heavily into buying games and movies and sort of using both consoles for all different types of media. You know, I didn't just use my PlayStation 3 for games, I did watch movies and buy TV shows and put music on this thing. So I think there's going to be more for us to discuss and more for us to kind of discover as we kind of see what is on here in 2023. Now, I'm also going to be putting out a video in the next couple of weeks showing you my updated PlayStation 3 physical game collection. The last time I did one of those was back in 2018, and between 2018 and now, I think I've added about 10 or so games to the collection, so I'm really excited to actually go through that with everybody and show you all the updated PlayStation 3 game collection. So look for that in the coming weeks. I'm going to be working on that. I'm trying to get that out soon because I really want to show the entire collection as it is. Guys, if you are new to the channel here, maybe consider subscribing if you want to see more stuff like this. And if you are a returning viewer, again, super appreciate you stopping by for more content like this. Alrighty, but without further ado, let's actually take a look and see what's on my PlayStation 3 hard drive in 2023. And before we actually get into like what's on here, just wanted to point out the theme that I'm using here. This is a dynamic theme. This is from The Last of Us, right? We've got Ellie there, and then there's some like fog and smoke. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like moving very slowly to the left side of the screen. So I'm not using the default XMB cross-media bar theme. And I believe I got this from a pre-order promotion when you pre-ordered Last of Us, you know, Last of Us on PlayStation 3. So I think you got the game, obviously, the theme, and then the soundtrack, which should be on this hard drive. So first thing here is going to be photos, which, okay, I've definitely offloaded my photos because I don't have any here right now, which honestly might be a blessing in disguise. No one wants to look at old photos. So nothing in the photos department, but I know I've got music here, and I do. So it looks like I've got a couple of folders here. I've got The Last of Us. So this is the first one here. And like I said, this is from pre-ordering Last of Us when it first came out. So I got the theme, I got this entire soundtrack here, and then the game. And the soundtrack, I mean, you know, not much I can say to the soundtrack of Last of Us. It's a great soundtrack. I feel like as the games have gone on, the soundtracks have gotten even better and better and better. And I'm really partial to the Last of Us Part 2 soundtrack, which was, I believe, I hope I'm saying the name right, composed by Mac Qualey, who also worked on the Mr. Robot soundtrack. So, you know, really great stuff there, and I love Mac Qualey. I think there's some really awesome tracks in Last of Us Part 2. And then I've got, looks like Beyond Two Souls here. So I think this was another pre-order incentive. So when you pre-ordered Beyond Two Souls, you also got looks like a partial soundtrack, which I really hate that that's a thing where they give you like 2 tracks or 3 tracks. Like Last of Us gave you the whole thing, you know? But nevertheless, I mean, Beyond Two Souls has an excellent soundtrack too. I mean, you got Hans Zimmer, you got Lorne Balfe, I hope I'm saying that name right. But like, you got some real heavy hitters over here composing this entire soundtrack. And I do remember the Infraworld as being one of my favorite tracks from the soundtrack. But yeah, man, I mean, like Beyond Two Souls, I pre-ordered that game. I think it was with the Steelbook and everything. But yeah, the soundtrack's great. The soundtrack is excellent. Then we've got another pre-order incentive here. Again, this is like back when I used to pre-order games. I don't really do that as much anymore. But you've got Puppeteer here. Now, let me go to the top. Puppeteer is a very, very underappreciated game. Not many people know about it, to be fair. It is something that kind of just came out and didn't really do very well. Not because it was a bad game, just because it didn't really get a whole lot of marketing around it. But this is a criminally underrated game. It is an excellent platformer, and it has very unique mechanics that make it its own thing. And it's unfortunate because we'll probably never see a port or a remaster for this title. I doubt Sony is in the mood for like taking risks, you know, and releasing something like this for PlayStation 5. But man, yeah, Puppeteer is excellent. I think that if you haven't played it and you like platformers, if you like games with, you know, quirky, charming sort of natures to them, you should absolutely check out Puppeteer. It is a hidden gem on the platform, and it's something that, you know, we may never see on new consoles, I guess is the main thing. Okay, last one here is another pre-order incentive for Rain, and this is one of the most egregious ones, where you can see here there's only 2 tracks, and it's basically the same track, one in, I think, just mono or one in just normal stereo, but then you have one that's also in 5.1 surround sound, which was never applicable to me because I only ever, you know, had a small rinky-dink TV, and all the music I was playing was out of those 2 speakers, so I never had like 5.1 or anything like that crazy. Next, we're going into the video section. Now, there's definitely going to be a lot to talk about here, as I've already mentioned. You know, I used PlayStation 3 not only for games, but also movies and music, and more so leaning into the movie side. As you can see, I've got a movies folder here with 24 titles, and then I've got a TV shows with 35. We're not going to go through all the TV stuff individually because it's really just like bits and bobs of, you know, there's no like full seasons or anything interesting like that. But let's start with movies. I'm going to go all the way back up to the top here, starting with 50/50. All right, so 50/50, you're going to see a lot of like mixtures of genres and things. You got like 50/50, and then you got like Anchorman 2. Okay, cool, like comedies, right? But then you have like a Best Picture winner here, like Argo, and it's like, okay, there's some weirdness, right? You got some like comedies, and then you got like an Oscar thing, cool. But then you go back to like comedies here. This is Jason Bateman's Bad Words, which I actually still think is pretty funny. I actually like this movie quite a bit. But again, you know, then you have like more of a like unique sort of like more independent feature, such as like Buried, starring Ryan Reynolds, which this one's pretty cool. This is like a 1.5-minute movie where Ryan Reynolds is just buried alive in this coffin. He's trying to figure out like how the heck he got there and how can he get out. So like cool stuff like that. I kind of like this movie. Then you have like Captain Phillips, right? More like the Oscar baity stuff. Nothing wrong with this movie. I think this movie's great, but you know, there's like a lot of variation. And then it kind of leaves me to Dallas Buyers Club, which it's a great movie, but like ask me if I've watched it since the first time I watched it back in like 2014 or whenever it first came out. It's like, yeah, haven't watched it since it came out, and I probably never will. It's not one of those movies that you can just like rewatch and be entertained by. Like, there's some heavy stuff in there, man. Like, you know, I just haven't rewatched it. Then you get something like Drag Me to Hell that I've rewatched a dozen times. This is, I think, one of Sam Raimi's better movies. You know, it's got a good mixture of like comedy, horror, and then there's like some gore in there. Drag Me to Hell, I feel like, is very underappreciated. And when it comes to Sam Raimi's filmography, who, you know, he's the guy who did like Evil Dead, just to kind of give you that reference there. It's one of his better movies. I think it's cohesive, and just kind of like all of the parts to it are very good. You know, doesn't really eclipse things like Army of Darkness, but like, you know, still very, very good. And then you have arguably like one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Drive, starring Ryan Gosling. And Ryan Gosling's great in the movie, but it's just like a very different type of experience. And I think this movie kind of didn't do super well with mainstream audiences because it was sort of marketed as one thing. And so when, you know, you go to see the movie, there really wasn't a whole lot of like driving or like car chases or anything. It wasn't really about that. But that was sort of exactly what the expectation was. But, you know, Drive's a great movie. This is, again, one of my favorite movies of all time. Then you've got another really good comedy here. You got Hot Fuzz. So this is Edgar Wright. I still think this is his best movie in terms of the first 3 that he had, which were Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End, which I also know is on this hard drive. I think Hot Fuzz just works on so many levels, from like editing, the comedy, the action. Like, it is a very complete package in terms of like movie. And, you know, I still think it's very good. Layer Cake. So this is Matthew Vaughn. This is the dude who did Kingsman and Kick-Ass, just to kind of name more of the bigger ones that he's known for. This is one of the earlier heist films that he had directed, and it's visually very impressive, and it has that style that he's very known for, that like zippy, snappy style. And it's one of the earlier Daniel Craig movies too, so definitely worth checking out, I think. Limitless with Bradley Cooper, cool. Looper, and did I say Limitless with Bradley Cooper? Yeah, and Looper is good. I've got some Moonrise Kingdom on here, so, you know, Wes Anderson in the house over here. But I want to talk about Nebraska, because this is one that was really cool. Just never really, not many people ended up talking about it, but that's a good movie. I would totally recommend checking out Nebraska. Philomena, I only watched it the one time, and it's a good movie. I've never felt the need to want to rewatch this one, to be honest. It's just not one of those things where I could just throw on and be entertained. Like, it's good, it's just not something I can rewatch over and over and over again. Pineapple Express, though, I have rewatched a ton of times, and I still think the first 30 minutes to this movie aren't funny. Like, it doesn't work for me, but everything after that is very effective, and I really like that movie. Then you got more Wes Anderson on here with Grand Budapest Hotel, which is really good. That's a good movie. You got The Heat on here. I still think Spy is a better Melissa McCarthy vehicle, like comedy movie. The Heat's still solid, but Spy has so many funny moments in it. If you haven't seen Spy, that's totally worth looking into. And then we've got the second Hunger Games here. We've got Hunger Games Catching Fire, which I also think is the best Hunger Games movie. The first one's solid, but Catching Fire is just like, you watch the opening sequence to that movie and you're like, wow, this is like, they're really stepping it up. This is like a whole different look and feel to what the first one was. And then Mockingjay, the last two movies were meh. They were fine, but Catching Fire is without a doubt the best out of all the Hunger Games movies. Then you've got Gore Verbinski, I believe, is the weatherman. Well, Nick Cage is the weatherman, but Gore Verbinski directed this one. This is fine. This is a good Nick Cage movie. He's not like unhinged in this one as much as he is in some of the other stuff, right? Like Face Off. It's still good, still entertaining though. Then this brings me to The World's End. So like I was mentioning before, I have nothing wrong to say, like nothing bad with this movie at all. It's very well made. I just think that like Hot Fuzz is still a better time overall for me. It's just a better time, start to finish. And then you have arguably like one of the best Disney animated anythings to have come out in a very, very, very long time. And this is Wreck-It Ralph, obviously. Wreck-It Ralph, man, like kind of came out of nowhere. Didn't expect it to be as good as it is. Wreck-It Ralph's just so good. And it still holds up. It is excellent. And unfortunately, it was victim to having a horrible sequel that was completely not needed. Like, that sequel was just like, what the heck was that sequel, man? This first movie's so good. Why'd you have to pollute Wreck-It Ralph's name with this second movie? And then finally, we've got an Adam Sandler movie. We've got You Don't Mess with the Zohan, which this is a guilty pleasure of mine. I don't recommend the extended cut because it just adds more to the runtime. And it's like, this movie should have been like an hour and a half. It doesn't need to be almost 2 hours. But it's a good time. I had a good time with it. There's some funnier moments, and I think in terms of all of the newer Adam Sandler stuff, this is one of his better ones. In my opinion, this is just something that I have enjoyed more than some of his other new stuff. Alrighty, so now we're going to go to the TV shows. We're not going to go through each and every single one because we'll be here until like forever. But you can see I've got some Curb Your Enthusiasm in here. I've got some Sunny in Philadelphia, always a good time there. So I think with a lot of the TV shows, since streaming services weren't as big or as prevalent as they are nowadays, I was following things week to week. And so following things week to week is a little bit harder because you might miss something and then you have to hope that there's a rerun. And so for a lot of these things, you'll notice that like I've got like bits and pieces in here. I've got like 1 or 2 episodes from certain seasons. In the case of like Walking Dead, I've got a couple of episodes for certain seasons. And so a lot of this was just that, I'd end up buying TV episodes just to like catch up on things that I've missed. Or in the case of like Wilfred, I really liked that show. And it was very hard to just casually watch that show. Like it was just, not on very often. And if you missed it, you missed it. So I ended up just buying a bunch of season 2 stuff in here. And then there's, I think, 1 episode at the bottom for season 3, which I think it was just because I could watch it more frequently and there were more places to watch that show. But again, for some of the shows that was like harder to watch or get a hold of, I ended up just buying quite a few episodes just so I can have access to it. And, and then the other shows on here is just like kind of 1 or 2 episodes here or there. But there's a lot of comedies and a couple of dramas. Alrighty, so now we're going to move over to the final section here. This is I think the main reason why we're all here, which is the games section. So I've got quite a few digital games to go through, and so we'll actually just scroll. Oh, so I've got a disc in there. Nice. So I've got Toy Story 3 in here. I love Toy Story 3, man. I think this is one of the better movie licensed games. 100%. There's so much content in this game, and I think right there up next to like Peter Jackson's King Kong, it is actually a very good movie licensed game. So yeah, Toy Story 3, if you have played it, let me know in the comments. I really liked it. Obviously, it's on my PlayStation 3, so I liked it. Okay, next below those, though, I've got some games here. Okay, yeah, so I've got Sega Genesis Collection. I've got Burnout Legends, Parappa the Rapper, Scrabble, Tetris, and Valkyria Chronicles 2. So these are all PSP games, actually, or games that you can play on your PSP, I should say. Anybody that has a PlayStation 3, PSP, you'll know that the most effective way to do any sort of content management with your PSP is to download your PSP games onto a PS3 and then connect your PSP to that PS3 so you can copy your games directly to your PSP. So essentially what you would do is you just go and buy a bunch of PSP games, and then if you select one of the games installed on your hard drive, you have the option to copy that game to your PSP that you would connect via USB, and it just makes things so much easier from, again, like a content management perspective, because there's really no way with the PSP software to do that content management. And instead, if you have a PS3, it just makes things a lot easier, where you just have all these files and you just go one at a time, copy them to your PSP, and then back out, and then just copy, right? So I guess these are games that I had recently, or was recently moving over to my PSP. So you got, Scrabble, like I said, Tetris, and Valkyria Chronicles 2. All good games, right? All very good on-the-go experiences. But yeah, that's sort of like the big appeal to having the PS3 too, is that you could just offload all your stuff onto your PSP and just have it very easily accessible, and you don't have to like worry about how that content's getting managed or how you're moving things around, because it all happened from the PS3 and it was just very easy at that point, very seamless. But the last two things here, these are folders, and I thought it would be easier to just talk through some of these things that they've been organized into individual folders. So you've got PlayStation 3 stuff, right? And then you got your PlayStation folder, which are just effectively your classics, right? So like PS1 games. But let's start with the classics folder because it's a lot easier to reason about, because there's only 6 of them. And the first thing here is Street Fighter Alpha. So not much I can really say about Street Fighter here. And actually I realize, I'll go through the list, but there are some things that are missing. So we've got CTR, you got Crash Team Racing. I've always found this more enjoyable than like old Mario Kart, obviously until like things like Double Dash were in existence. But CTR was something that I played non-stop as a kid. Then you got things like Spyro the Dragon, like, okay, very like obviously, Spyro the Dragon, gotta have that. Then you have Crash Bandicoot Warped. Then you got Crash Bandicoot 2. So a lot of Crash stuff, but then the last thing here is Final Fantasy V, which I've played so many times. I love the battle theme. I love the bridge fight. I played this game on PS3, PS Vita, PSP. Like, I played it so many times over. It is definitely one of my favorite Final Fantasy games, right there with like 6 and 7. But there are some games that are missing in this folder. I will say that. I know for a fact I have Parasite Eve, the original Parasite Eve, on my PSP. So I guess I must have deleted that off of this hard drive as soon as I copied it over to my PSP for whatever reason. But I did have, I think, 2 or 3 more classics on this PlayStation 3 hard drive originally. They're not here anymore. But I am curious if anybody out there has gone through and downloaded a bunch of PlayStation Classics games like Herc or anything like anything older, right, in the PlayStation library. I'm curious, like, what are some of the PlayStation classics that I should look into? Like I said, I've got Parasite Eve that I've played and have on my PSP, but I'm always looking forward to learning and experiencing new stuff from the older generations. Like, I recently played Legend of Dragoon for the first time on my PlayStation 5, and I know that's something that you can actually download onto your PlayStation 3 and play. So if you have any recommendations, just let me know. I'm always looking for new classics titles to experience. And that's going to do it for the classics folder though. So let's dive into the biggest folder so far, beating out TV by 2 titles. Let's take a look at the PlayStation 3 folder. Alrighty, so starting here in the PlayStation 3 folder, first title up is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Now, I do remember that there was some controversy where I believe it was Ubisoft took this game off of marketplaces, and now obviously we have like the PS4 version of this game, but for a while I believe you couldn't get access to this game. It was just off of all the marketplaces. And I haven't played the PlayStation 4 version. I've only ever played the original PlayStation 3 release of this game, and I really like it. I actually want to get my partner to try this one out because I know she loves the movie, and we're always looking for fun co-op games to play, and this would be a good time. I think it's very much like a beat 'em up, like a Castle Crasher type game, and I think it would be a fun time. So yeah, maybe at some point we'll play that one. Then we've got Dante's Inferno. So this one's interesting. I actually bought this game physically when it first came out. I think I even got like the collector's edition, which came with the statue of Dante. This, I believe I got maybe through PlayStation Plus. This is okay. This game's okay. It's a God of War clone. I don't want to like use that term because I know it's offensive, right, to the developers, but it is a God of War type game, and obviously it's set to Dante's Inferno, like the 7 deadly sins, the layers of hell, right? 7 deadly sins? No, it's the layers of hell. What am I saying? And so anyway, it's a good experience. It's definitely a little messed up. This is coming from Visceral Studios, RIP Visceral Games. These are the guys that did Dead Space, though, so obviously you know that they know how to make a messed up game if they wanted to, and they did. It's very unsettling and unnerving. Doesn't make it any better, but I've actually seen a resurgence in this game where people say, oh, it's so underappreciated, blah, blah, blah. I think it's fine. DuckTales Remastered. Now, this was a free game with PlayStation Plus. I've never played this game. I've heard that the remaster is great. If you've played this game, please let me know how it is down below. And haven't gotten around to actually playing this one, though. Then we've got Big Bad Mirror's Edge. Now, I'm going to be doing a video on this game because I recently platinumed Mirror's Edge, and it was a very painful experience. So look forward to that video in the future. I never expected to platinum this game in a million years. But since I was recently revisiting this game, like I can speak to it a bit more clearly than some of these other games. It is it's imperfect. Like there's definitely faults and flaws to the game, but I think it's still very unique. You don't see anything like this nowadays. And DICE, I appreciate DICE for taking the risk and making something like this because it is good. I think there are some very good components to it, but man, if anyone's played this game, you know that those cutscenes for the story are very bad. Like, I don't know who signed off on those designs, or who signed off on the general idea behind how they wanted to artistically convey the story. It's like, it is just not good to look at. But, you know, Mirror's Edge as a whole, I enjoyed revisiting it, but man, I did not enjoy that platinum. I'll save that for another video. So now we have God of War Ghosts of Sparta. This is the second PSP outing for Kratos, and I still prefer Chains of Olympus. And to be honest, I'm not like a big God of War fan, or I'm not a big OG God of War fan. I thought the first game really wasn't for me. The second game, though, was incredible. I still think that second game is like one of my favorite games I've ever played. It was so good. And coming from the first game directly into that second one, I was like blown away. And I do like the PSP games, but I'm very much a fan of the newer God of War games, if I'm just being completely honest. Then we've got The Last Guy. Sorry. This game wasn't really for me. I remember watching an old IGN video review and thought the game looked cool. It's like a top-down puzzle game from what I recall, and it just wasn't for me. I played about maybe like 15 minutes to half an hour and just, you know, I stopped playing it. So if anyone's played this game, let me know what your thoughts are on it. I just didn't really vibe with me, and neither did Haze. Now, thankfully, this is just the demo. I didn't buy the actual full game, and I'm glad I didn't, because the demo did not reassure me that I made the right choice by just downloading the demo. And so I actually re-downloaded the demo recently, so I think it was like over a year ago, just to like play it and see like, oh, like what was this game really as bad as people were saying? Yeah, this game sucks. It is very unfortunate. I think it was kind of set up for failure. You know, when you're marketed as the Halo killer, which I mean, like, whatever phrasing of all that stuff, but you're only gonna just be set up for failure. There's no way you could eclipse something like that at the time, and this game was just mediocre, man. Yeah, that's Haze. I've watched some recent videos of YouTubers kind of going back and experiencing this game in 2023, and it just, yeah, it's very bad. Fun to sort of go and dive down that rabbit hole if you want to, but yeah, that's Haze. Then we've got Sound Shapes here. I've talked about this one quite a bit on the channel, and it's a very fun platforming game where sort of, you know, you have like these big music artists that also have done collaborations to sort of incorporate their music, their works into tracks specific to the game. Very cool overall. Really nice little indie game here. Then we've got Dead Space 3 here. Now, I've never played Dead Space 3, to be honest. I've only played the first and second Dead Space, and I really like Dead Space 2. Obviously, the first one's great. We'll see that one later on. But I've heard from a lot of people that the third game really leaned into the action side of things, and the melodrama, the like melodramatic components of the game were sort of what held it back in some ways. So overall, like, I haven't played this game, but I would like to at some point experience it and have my own opinion on Dead Space 3. Next here is Remember Me. Now, I don't know if anybody's heard of this game or even remembers this game. I can't remember if this was a Capcom game or a Ubisoft game, but this was a very interesting cyberpunk, like, action fighting game. Like, it had a lot of different mechanics in it. But overall, this was a very interesting experience. I hadn't played it until maybe a couple of years ago. I just realized it was on my hard drive, I think from maybe like PS Plus or something. And I had a good time with it. There are so many aspects to it that I remembered. Like, it had more potential. I wish I could have seen more out of this universe, but I don't think it performed that well critically. It didn't sell that well. And again, like, not many people know what this game is, which fair. I mean, if it's not marketed, right, like, how are you gonna know? I'd recommend checking it out. It is very different, and I like the cyberpunk aesthetic. I like the combat more or less in the game. And there's a rewind sort of memory mechanic where it's similar to like Cyberpunk 2077, where you can like rewind through sections to find out clues. It's very similar to that. So as a frame of reference there, but that's Remember Me. Then next here we've got Brothers. I believe this was also a Hazelight game. So this is the It Takes Two studio, I believe. And so, but Brothers is a very like small project that sort of had these core like co-op ideas for the, you know, where the studio, I guess, wanted to posture themselves, like where they wanted to position themselves within the industry. And Brothers serves as a very good like POC, like proof of concept, that they have iterated on top of with their subsequent titles, and ultimately ended up perfecting with It Takes Two, which is like one of my favorite games I've played in like so many years. But Brothers overall is like a nice insular, like a very small scale indie experience that you can play with you know, somebody locally, right, and get something out of it because you have that like immediate connection with the person you're playing with on the same couch as you. But Brothers was good. Brothers was good. This is all I'll say, that Brothers was a good time. Okay, Borderlands 2. I actually am not a Borderlands fan. The only Borderlands game I liked was Tales from the Borderlands. And I thought the first Borderlands was boring. I played it a lot on my Xbox 360 back in school with my friends, and they loved it. I thought it was boring. I don't know what it is. I just never have been into this series. I've heard Borderlands 2 is a huge improvement over the first, but I don't know. Let me know if I'm crazy. Maybe I should give the second one a shot. But I've just never been a fan of Borderlands. I think that Telltale did an excellent job at making a non-Borderlands fan enjoy like a Borderlands piece of content with Tales from the Borderlands. New Tales from the Borderlands is garbage. Moving on, next we have Wolf Among Us here. So I think between, you got Telltale Studios and they made the first season of The Walking Dead, and then Wolf Among Us is their other killer title that like you have to play. If you are a fan of Telltale, you've got the first season of The Walking Dead. Obviously that's classic, but then you have Wolf Among Us, which is just so good. It's so good. The style, the music, the writing, the voice acting. This is such an incredible experience. And back when I used to have friends that worked at Telltale, they even remembered how much they liked working on this game. So highly recommend Wolf Among Us. Check it out. Now this brings me to Walking Dead Season 2. Now, I said the first season of The Walking Dead was great. Season 2 is actually very good too. I feel like after Season 2, The Walking Dead Telltale games took a huge nosedive until the final season, which I thought the final season did a lot of things that I didn't expect it was going. I didn't expect have it be set in the location that it was set in for the final season. Yeah, I mean, for the longest time, I feel like the Telltale Walking Dead games were not so great. Season 2 is great. I love Season 2. But I'm just saying in terms of the killer apps, right? Like the best of the best. It's the first season and Wolf Among Us for me. Next, we've got Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. Now, I'm very happy that we're getting more Dragon's Dogma content in this day and age. It is very good. I think not many people played it, and so it's cool that we're actually getting more Dragon's Dogma stuff. I would say, maybe wait until the new one comes out. If you enjoy it, maybe try out Dark Arisen. It is very fun. And yeah, I'm, again, just very happy to see more Dragon's Dogma stuff. In general, I will be trying out anything moving forward from this universe. So Dragon's Dogma. Okay, and then we've got the original, the OG Dead Space, which I have played recently, and I did get the platinum for a couple months ago, and it still holds up. I still cannot believe how well this game holds up. It is still creepy and atmospheric, and brooding, and just like very good. And the gameplay holds up. It's like not as clunky as I remember it being, but I will say that playing it on my PlayStation 3 for whatever reason was a bit choppy. So I don't know if that's the game or if it's just my PlayStation 3, it needs a good cleaning or something, or the hard drive needs to be replaced. But in terms of the core experience, it delivers. Time and time again, it is very, very effective, and it scares. Now, next here, we've got Killzone. I'm not going to talk about this one. I've already talked about it on other videos, and I just ultimately don't love the first Killzone. I love Killzone 2, but the first one, I do not like this game. I'm sorry, I do not like it. But we've got another game here that I can't speak to as well, which is DMC Devil May Cry. This was a PlayStation Plus free game. I've heard that it's not the best Devil May Cry game, and over the years, people have sort of come around to this more or less, but I have nothing to really say except that it's just one of those free games that, you know, it's in my backlog, and I may never play this one, but I'm curious. If you have, let me know. And the same will go for the next game here, which may upset some people, but this is Sleeping Dogs, and this is an open world like GTA type game. I've never played it. It is another free PlayStation Plus game that I downloaded because I was going to play it, but ultimately just never had the chance to. And then when I, you know, so many years have passed, I just never got around to it. So I would like to play this game at some point. It is on it's my very big backlog here. But if you have played this game, please let me know. Like, what do you think of it? Should I prioritize playing this game? Like, should I just try it out and see how it is? Should I even bother with the PlayStation 3 version? Should I just go get like a definitive version for PS4 or something? Just let me know. But I can't really speak to Sleeping Dogs either here. And I really, honestly, now I'm looking at Rain again. The only thing I can remember about this game was that I pre-ordered it, right? I got the soundtrack, and the thing that drew me in initially during all of the reveal trailers and the teasers for this game was the atmosphere and the music. And I don't remember the gameplay being too unique or fun. And so ultimately, I just remember this game really didn't leave a lasting impression on me, aside from just the atmosphere that it created visually and with the music as well. But the gameplay itself, I don't remember doing anything unique, and just kind of being boring. Hitman Absolution. This is again another victim of free PlayStation Plus game. I've never been a big Hitman fan. You know, I've never really played any of them, so I guess I can't say like I've never became one because I've never played them. But I have heard a lot of people like Hitman 2. I think Blood Money is what it is. Curious to know what you think the best Hitman game is down below. Should I check out Absolution? Is it a waste of my time? Like, what Hitman game would I want to get into for my first Hitman game? Let me know. I have no reference to this entire series, but I have some things to say about this game. So Battlefield 3. Now, Battlefield Bad Company 2, I still really enjoyed. I love the story. I love the multiplayer. I played a ton of it back in the day. And I feel like the Battlefield series has never really been the same for me after Battlefield 3. Battlefield 4 was good, but it was horribly broken on PlayStation 4. Like, there were game-breaking bugs where I think after like the third or fourth mission, if you hit a checkpoint and the game crashed, you would lose your save file and have to completely start a new save file. The multiplayer was problematic on day one. Like, I feel like the Battlefield series has gone through so much crap over the years. I still find myself wanting the days of like Battlefield Bad Company 2 or even like Battlefield 3 I enjoyed. I mean, you even had like what, Battlefield 2047, 48, 49, I don't know, 2046, whatever that title was. Everyone that I know that's a fan of Battlefield still, they didn't like that game. You know, Battlefield 3 I enjoyed. Battlefield Bad Company 2 is still like cream of the crop, one of my favorite first-person shooters. Just for me, like, I really enjoyed that one. Next here is XCOM Enemy Unknown. This is actually, I had this from, I think, PlayStation Plus as well. So I never played it on my PlayStation 3, but I played it on my PC when I eventually had my own gaming PC. Wow, this game's great. This game is something where I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. There were certain gameplay mechanics that were present that I just found myself saying like, oh, you know, this doesn't seem like something I could get into or something that I would enjoy, but I was way, way, way wrong. Like, this is an excellent game, and it's one of those games that makes me realize like I can't just judge a book by its cover, because when I actually started getting into the nitty-gritty of it all, like, I was just hooked and I had a good time with it. Now we got something that's going to make me sad to look at. This is Starhawk. So this is like a spiritual successor to Warhawk, which was an early PlayStation 3 generation multiplayer only game. Starhawk was just unfortunately one of those things that like had zero marketing, didn't sell very well. It critically did pretty well, but like nobody bought the game, and then nobody played the online component. And so this game just died. It died like a few months after it came out. And unfortunately, you know, that was the case, but this is actually really, really solid. I don't know many people that have, you know, played it from my friends list personally, but like I played the heck out of it when it came out, and I really like Starhawk. I think it's cool to me that like people are actually still playing Warhawk on their PlayStation 3s. Like, they're actually changing their DNS configurations to play that game online. So maybe I'll play some Warhawk. But Starhawk was really solid. I just wish that it had gotten the love and attention that it deserved. I wish it had gotten some form of marketing to actually move more units. You know, I highly recommend Starhawk, but obviously, like, You're not gonna get too much value out of it without the multiplayer component, to be honest. Metro Last Light. So this is obviously from the Metro series. This used to be my favorite Metro game until Exodus came out, and I played that on my PC, and I had a really good time with Exodus. The Last Light I played the heck out of. I played it like maybe 2 or 3 times all the way through. I've got the platinum trophy for it. It's a very good game. And this is my first Metro game. I did Metro Last Light first because I think the first Metro game was exclusive to Xbox, and then that became sort of cross-platform. So yeah, so Last Light was sort of my first foray into Metro, and yeah, it made me realize how great the series is. Now we've got Deus Ex Human Revolution. I have notes right there. So Human Revolution, I did not play Mankind Divided. I heard it was not as good as the first game, but to be honest, I played about 20 hours of this game and I fell off, and not because it was bad, I just had other things that came up. And then it's one of those things where like when I spend 20 hours on a game and then I, take some time away from it, maybe like months away from it, I can't just like come back into the game. Like I have to start the game over to really get the most out of it, and I didn't feel like doing that, and so I just never finished this game. Nothing wrong with it, but whatever it was at the time, I just kind of fell off with it. Next, we've got Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, which is a lot of fun. It's very cheeky. I like the humor in this game. I like the visual aesthetics here. And it's very fast. It's very fast paced. So I had a good time with Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. Far Cry 3 was like, when that came out, I was eating it up. Like I really enjoyed it. And I feel like, again, Far Cry has been one of those things where like after Far Cry 4, I just didn't bother with the series. I didn't even really love Far Cry 4 too much, to be honest. Like Far Cry 2 and 3, really solid games. But Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon was also very good, and sort of like a DLC, like extra piece of content you can kind of download and experience its own story for. Next here is BioShock Infinite. I will say when this game first came out, I did not love it. Didn't expect it to be the type of game that it was. Based on previous E3 trailers and sort of the marketing materials that had led us to up until the game's release, it was very different from like what was advertised. But after I had beaten the game and took a break from it and actually revisited all of the BioShocks a couple months after that, I really like BioShock Infinite. And BioShock Infinite is actually the one BioShock game I've replayed the most, if you could believe it. Like for some reason, there's more replayability to that game for me than some of the other ones. Not to say that this is better than the first game, because that is not what I am saying at all. First game is one of the best games ever made. And like I recently played the first BioShock again. Actually, I just got the platinum trophy for that one. But I recently replayed the first BioShock again, and it is so crazy to me how good of an experience that game is still. Like it is such an incredible game start to finish. Even today, like it holds up in so many regards with its world building, with its lore, the storytelling. And anyway, BioShock Infinite's good. I've come around to it and I enjoy it. It definitely does not meet the expectations of some of the other games, but it's still good. And then we go here into the, I think, 2013 Tomb Raider. I'm gonna just be honest with you guys. I think this game's mid. When it first came out, all my friends were like, oh, it's so good, you gotta play it. And I played it and I said, yeah, it's fine. Like you have these meh characters, the story is fine. I feel like the jump from Lara being kind of like this, oh, I'm just a researcher, blah blah blah, and then she just is like shooting people up, and like the jump is so drastic. There's no gradual weaning ourselves up into that point. It's just sudden. And you also have these horrible, boring ass characters that are sort of filling the rest of the story with these very generic sort of like tropey sequences. Then you have like the sequel to this game, Rise of the Tomb Raider, which is incredible. And then you have Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which is just fine. I think there's some stuff. I didn't like where they took that game personally from a narrative standpoint, but I think if you look at all the games as a whole, Rise of the Tomb Raider is the best one in so many ways. But then like you have the first game, which has some good promising components to it, but it's just like, I think it's overrated. And then we've got Vanquish here, which I think is a little underrated. So this is from Platinum Games. This is from the Bayonetta developers, right? Amongst other things. Vanquish is a very like flashy and fun and quick third-person shooter. Sorry, that was for third-person shooter. And it's like a B action movie, like kind of like, cheese ball, like writing and dialogue, but it's fun. It's a very fun game. Next here is Unfinished Swan. Now, this was a game that I didn't really love when I first played it, and I actually beat the game, took some time away from it, and then replayed it about a couple months afterwards, and I still didn't really love it. There's some really great stuff near the end, but I don't think this game was what I was expecting it to be, which is like, you know, that's my own fault, right? Like I shouldn't have expectations about those sorts of things. But ultimately I didn't enjoy the type of experience that I was having with this game. And so, you know, that's sort of why, no, it's just not for me. But I can appreciate the artistry behind it. And the studio has gone on to do really amazing stuff. Again, this is just one of those things where this first game wasn't for me, but all their subsequent stuff has really gravitated with me, and you know, I enjoy it quite a bit. Next here is Resident Evil 4. So this is the very first experience that I had playing Resident Evil 4. Yes, it was not on GameCube, it wasn't on the Wii, it was the PlayStation 3 HD version of Resident Evil 4, which I know has slight omissions, or there's certain aspects that are absent from this version of the game as opposed to like the Wii one or the GameCube one. But obviously, since I had no framework, I had no prior knowledge or experience with this game, it didn't really matter to me. I was just there to experience what some hail as one of the best horror games of all time, right? And I really enjoyed this game, start to finish. This was like an excellent game. Not like horror game aside, you know, it was just a very good experience, start to finish. There are some aspects that I didn't really like near the back third of the game. I think all the castle stuff kind of wasn't as interesting to me as a location. I liked more of the village components to the game. Like I didn't really love some of the more like castle stuff near the end, but like, again, start to finish, I really enjoyed like the core experience of Resident Evil 4, and it kind of primed me for other games in the series. The funny thing though is that I played 5 before I played 4, and I thought personally, I thought I was gonna not like 4 because I didn't like 5, but yeah, they're just like completely different games. Then next here we've got Okami. This is wow, this game is pretty interesting too. So this is like the best thing I can say about this one is like if you like Zelda experiences in your games, like more puzzle based, you know, games, or like puzzle with some action involved as well, but sort of like a grand adventure. This is going to be right up your alley. You play as a sun god named Amaterasu, and you go on this grand journey, and you like sort of have these different abilities that you can, you know, different abilities where you actually utilize like these brush strokes to do these attacks. And there was actually a Wii version of Okami, which I imagine is probably the definitive way to play this game because you actually have like motion controls to do the brush strokes, right? But again, like kind of coming into this game not knowing or having any reference as to like what this game would be, I really enjoyed it, and I'm not normally like a big Zelda person, but there was something about this game that really just gravitated with me, and I had a good time with it. And so I'd highly recommend Okami, especially if you do like Zelda experiences and you like those like sort of like action puzzle, like, you know, adventure-based games. But now we have the real animal game here. This is Tokyo Jungle. This is one of the best, like just most hidden gem you could ever find on the PlayStation 3. This game is like, if you know about this game, you know about this game. If you don't know what this game is, you're like, what the heck is Tokyo Jungle? Tokyo Jungle, and I can't even really explain it because it's like hard to explain, but it's like a survival action game where you play as different animals and you're just trying to survive day after day after day after day in this post-apocalyptic backdrop. And so like, you know, you'll play as animals and you'll have to like fight off other animals that are trying to eat you, and then you'll have to like find food and resources and shelter and just kind of keep staying safe through the different days. And you know, this is one of those games where I had a buddy that I showed this to back in the day, and he's not like a big gamer, and I showed this to him and he was like hooked. He was so into this game that he bought a PlayStation 3, he bought this game digitally, and he played it with his brother to the point where like they had 100% completion on everything. And I did not expect him to love it as much as he did, but he still, anytime I mentioned Tokyo Jungle to him, just like casually, like floating that name around, he always remembers like, oh man, that game's sick. Like it is one of those very like small games that like if you know about the game, you know about the game. But it sucks because we'll probably never get anything like this on the new PlayStation consoles. I think this is also a Japan studio game. All right, we've got a couple left here. We got BioShock 2 here. Now, I don't have anything bad to say about BioShock 2. I'll just say that there are pieces in here that like show you, okay, there's some BioShock stuff in this game, but it doesn't really do anything for me. To be honest, like there's some really good creepy atmospheric moments, and I think the Big Sisters is what they were called, were actually scary. I think that they were a very good threat to have in this game. The appeal of the first game is you're playing as this dude who, you know, has this plane crash that happens and then he stumbles upon Rapture. Like it puts you in a different set of shoes, but it's more effective in sort of what type of experience it wants you to have. And this is very, you know, you're a big daddy, so it's a very different type of experience, different type of feeling that you have when you go and play the game. And I also think that the multiplayer really was not great. I played maybe like 1 or 2 rounds, and that was it for me for that. Next here we have PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. So this is Sony's Hero Fighter game, or their Super Smash Bros game, basically. It's still crazy to me that no studio has ever been able to capture the magic of Super Smash Brothers. Like, no other Smash Bros type game comes even close to the type of game that Smash Bros is. I remember I tried this out. I brought a couple of friends over. We tried out a couple of rounds, and ultimately they were like, can we just play Smash instead? It's not a bad game. It's just like, man, Smash is just so good. It's just too good for its own. It's just too good for any other game. It's incredible to me that game is as good as it is, and no one's been able to ever get close to achieving that sort of magic. And then the last game here is, Journey. This is the first digital game I bought on my PlayStation 3, and it is so good. If you haven't played Journey, it is one of the best experiences you can have playing any game. Like, this is just next level. This was the first digital game I bought. I saw the trailers, I saw the reviews. I'm like, I have to try this game out. And it is still one of those things where that ending happens, and man, it like hits you like a ton of bricks, and it is just so good and unlike anything else. Even nowadays, it's still unlike anything else that comes out. And it is truly magical. It is one of a kind, and it is so good. And I cannot recommend this game. I can't recommend this game enough. It is just so good. If you haven't played it, what are you waiting for? Check out Journey. But yeah, everybody, so that is going to do it here. We've gone through all of my games, my movies, and my music. And that is pretty much what is on my PlayStation 3 hard drive in 2023. And if you want to see more stuff like this, stick around, because I'll be doing more PlayStation 3 videos in the next coming weeks. I'll be doing more trophy reviews, trophy-related content in the next coming weeks too. So stick around, guys, because there's plenty of content coming. And thanks again for tuning in and checking out what was on my PlayStation 3 hard drive. And I'll see you on the next one.